Okay, and then I will screen share. Okay, we are set.
All right. Works. Okay, I can call to order and roll call.
Okay, Guy Mason,
Present.
Scott Gilbert,
Present.
Helene, how do you state your last or say your last name?
Federici.
Federici, thank you.
Present.
Sarah Harkness,
Here.
Marie Hoda. Why do I always
What's
write
that?
one?
It's okay. I'm here.
Andy Zekaris,
Sakaris, yeah, present.
thank you. Amy Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Cuesta is not present at this time.
Present.
Oh, you are, thank you.
Yes, pardon me, missed you earlier. Thank you.
Excuse, we have Jen Hubbard, Inglewood School Liaison. Staff, we have Christina Underhill.
Here.
Mark Mullis.
Here.
And myself, Debbie Severa. Did I miss anyone? All right, thank you.
All right. Are there any questions from the minutes? Those.
I think the only thing is that I brought up new business that wasn't on the agenda to begin, and I didn't know if you wanted to add that, Debbie.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Okay. I'll get that
think it
added.
Yeah.
And I've got it in my notes. So.
Perfect.
Anything else, or we can move to approve?
I move to
I
approve
move-
minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. All right. Motion passes. Do we have any public comment? Nope. So much of the thing talks about public comment on here.
Okay, and Guy, if I can note, Austin just joined the meeting.
Oh, Austin.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, can you guys hear me now? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption, guys. Just making sure it was working. I was having some internet troubles earlier, but seems like it's all good now.
Okay. So we can move on to our statistical report.
Great. Pull it up. So I guess I'll offer commentary here. Statistics for the month, of course, are going to continue to be weird, especially as we do these year-to-date comparisons. June was our first full month of offering curbside pickup services, as well as, kind of following up on some of our efforts to draw a little more attention to digital resources, that sort of thing. So our days of service are based on the number of days where we were offering curbside. So that's why that number is lower, because we weren't supporting weekends. Actually, as of this week, we're now offering curbside on Saturdays as well. So that number will go up next for July. Virtual visits, tracking a little bit lower than year to date, but that mostly reflects decreased catalog activity, since the vast majority of those virtual visits are catalog. Let's see, patrons registered is pretty much where you'd expect it to be. We're good there. Okay, so let's get to circulation. So the thing most notable in circulation, we go a little bit out of order, is holds filled. If you look, our hold numbers are actually really similar to where they were in June 2019. And of course, this is reflecting anything but normalcy. What it's actually reflecting is the fact that anybody who's getting materials from the library right now is having to do so by placing a hold. And so, that's bringing those numbers up, even though the general circulation activity is down. So our physical materials circulation is about a quarter of what it would be under normal circumstances. A huge chunk of that, I think, is DVDs, and because we're just not seeing a lot of people placing holds on DVDs the way that they'll come into the library and they'll check out up to the limit. And then also children's books, like picture books. We'd have, if you all know, the families come in, they check out the giant stack of 50 picture books, and that's not happening. When people are placing holds right now for curbside pickup, it's usually adult fiction or nonfiction, and it's usually 2 or 3 items. So it's very different user behavior than what we see when the doors are actually open to the public. The digital materials circulation is, obviously up pretty significantly year to date. That's reflecting just what the expected behavior during a continued closure, with everyone trying to stay at home. So this month we see that jump because we're in the middle of summer. I think last month I called attention to the fact that it looked like the circulation for digital materials hadn't really changed, but when you broke it down, you saw that Tumble Books was actually responsible for creating the appearance that there wasn't much movement. And now you're actually seeing what it looks like in the middle of the summer, because Tumble Books, all that activity is really tied to the usage from the schools. Schools, June 2019, were, in summer. And so that's why we're seeing, the digital materials really accurately reflecting how much increased activity we're having. So breaking that down, we didn't include a detailed analysis this time, but it tracks similar to what you saw last time. Overdrive and Hoopla being the big drivers. Those are primarily ebooks and especially e-audio books. And then like our Canopy, the service where people can stream documentaries and independent films, it's continued to be up from where it normally would be. So the interesting thing there, total circulation is actually about half of what we would normally see, which is not great from a complete remove, but feels pretty good compared to where we might otherwise be, given that the library's closed. Any questions about any of that? I want to rush past it. That's okay.
So when people come to a library normally, do you get like a lot of what like retail would call impulse buys, like people just seeing something that looks interesting and picking it up?
Absolutely. And we're always trying to, market to that. We really put a lot of thought into the displays, trying to make sure that, especially like with the big circle when you walk in the library, that's the perimeter there is all new books. It's new fiction, new nonfiction, and new large print. We're always thoughtful about what stuff we're putting on display there to try to highlight materials that we think are going to move. And then in terms of impulse, like that's all. Like DVD checkout is all just browsing checkout. So I guess that's less impulse. People are they seek a movie. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of that, and we're missing out on all that activity. And we're trying to supplement it by, drawing attention to the catalog, drawing attention to the materials that are available through, and we'll talk about this later, the newsletter, through social media, that sort of thing. But you can't replace that impulse. They get their hands on the book and they grab it and go.
Are you getting inquiries from patrons asking when you're going to reopen
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll talk about that timeline. I think that's a agenda item coming up here shortly. So, yeah. But yeah, we're fielding that phone. The phone's getting that question multiple times a day. I had answered emails from people about that. Yeah. Let's see. Questions answered is just kind of estimating that's far from reflecting all the phone activity that we're doing. That's just the percent that we estimate is reference. That is basically people with an information need, not just a question of like, when are you gonna open, what are your hours, et cetera, et cetera. So if we scroll down to programs, I guess we can see the top of it there. I know we've been doing a lot of the virtual programs still, especially for children. Kimberly is estimating some of those numbers based on not just the numbers that we're seeing through like Facebook Live, like how many viewers we're seeing, but much more concrete, we're able to base our numbers on take and makes. And so the children's team is putting together the take and make kits. Families are calling and arranging pickup of those kits. Kimberly herself is trying to do as much of that as she can so that she can go out. It's wonderful. She dresses up in whatever costume she was wearing for the Facebook Live, and then she goes out and she gets to hand the take and makes over to the kids. And they just light up when they see her, especially since she's usually wearing some kind of like ridiculous costume. I think she was wearing like a sort of Snow White dress today when Christina was in the office, and it was kind of just like, oh yes, and she showed us a little handwritten note that she'd gotten from a little girl. It was one of those like, oh yeah, Kimberly's job is in a whole different world than the rest of us. Like it's great. So their programs, the in-house programs is reflecting virtual. It's also reflecting story time in the park. We've been doing, she's been doing story time in the park at 9:30 and 10 o'clock a couple times a week now. And those are real, so those just started toward the end of June. Those numbers are just, they're filling up every time. They're filling up very quickly. And we have to unfortunately limit the numbers based on the outdoor event social distancing calculator provided by Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So that even though we have a big space, we do have to pretty strictly limit the numbers. And so to do that, we've been doing things like it not disclosing which park the story time is going to be at until shortly before the story time begins. We do know that we have some walk-ups. We're not, kicking them away, kicking them out or anything. But all that has allowed us to preserve something like our normal, it's obviously a fraction of what we'd normally do, but something like respectable programming numbers. And so I think in July, we'll really see an increase in the children's programming numbers, specifically reflecting the story times in the park. We did everything we could to plan for Kid Stage, which is the summer concert series that usually takes place in July. But ultimately, we had to cancel that just based on how strict how public health guidance was in terms of how many people would be able to attend. The number, like with even if you can imagine where the light rail station is, where Kid Stage usually takes place, is the grassy area outside of there, that sort of amphitheater space. It was we were running the numbers as if estimating that it was even as high as 10,000 square feet, and it was only allowing us to have 31 people. It was just totally out of alignment with what would make sense to do as a program. And we followed up with CDPHE, or not with Tri-County Health Department, to say, like, is there any way we can cluster the families together and then separate the families by X number of feet apart? And it was just there was nothing we could do there. So we did have to cancel that one. So unfortunately, we won't have those numbers to celebrate this year for the July. So going down to young adult, let's see. This still reflects the teen and tween get-togethers on Zoom that Corinne is doing, and those numbers are, as you can see, they're kind of consistent with where we were at last year, which really shows that they've built a good relationship with a core group of teens and tweens. And they're finding a way to keep them engaged with the library and engaged with each other, which we feel really good about. The teen numbers are holding steady. It sounds like the tween numbers are actually going up a little bit. So that's really cool. Adult programming, a little down below, that's where, unfortunately, the numbers just aren't anywhere near where, it's proportionally, I guess, not entirely dissimilar from what's happening to children's. It's the numbers aren't what they used to be. It's really hard to figure out how to do adult programming right now. I know Michelle is looking at different ways to try to do. So instead of the computer classes, they've tried doing some pre-recorded computer classes. Those are getting decent viewership numbers on YouTube, but we're not considering that. I didn't think it was statistically accurate to claim those as equivalent to program attendance. Because if something like you post an Excel class on YouTube, people around the world are watching it. That's not, they might stumble into it. They might watch long enough for it to count as a view, but that's not the same value to the Englewood community as attendance at a in-person program. So those numbers largely reflect the book clubs. which they're doing a little bit virtually. I know that they actually did books at the bar with some sort of social distancing. They've done book clubs outside. So trying to just find ways to keep engaged with the book clubs in particular. And then in terms strategically of what we're going to do with sort of being unable to, computer classes is such a tough one because, you know, if somebody is technically savvy enough to be able to log into a virtual program, like a Zoom session like this or something like that, they're not typically the kind of person who would be coming to our computer classes, especially when it's things like, for example, we had one that was the getting over the fear of using your smartphone. Well, you know, you're 90% of the way there if you figured out how to log, you know, download the Zoom app and get into that Zoom program. So we're one of the things we're going to be exploring in the next couple weeks here is setting up times where people can schedule a one-on-one appointment with a staff member. We'll start it on the phone. We'll help them get to the point where they can connect to Zoom so they can be doing a one-on-one meeting, and then we can answer their question. So because we know that right now there's a lot of need for tech help out there that we're not meeting. And behaviorally, one of the things we often see with our computer classes is that people who attend those really attend those not because they want to learn generally what the class is about, but because they have like a specific question that they need answered. And so we're trying to figure out a way to, you know, continue to meet that need. So long way of saying adult programming is still a mystery to be solved right now. And of course, we have no revenue. Just we're not charging people fines right now, and we're not collecting any money right now. So.
I gotta think of these city departments that library, parks, and rec has probably taken about the harshest hit as far as revenues, because it's one of the few that has patron-sensitive revenues.
Parks and Rec, and yes, absolutely. Library, you know, it's relatively small. You know, we estimate about $10,000 annually that we bring in for fines, about another $10,000 annually that we bring in for things like the meeting room costs, and, you know, various other small charges that we have. So yeah, in terms of percentage, huge hit to revenue. But in terms of our overall operating budget, revenue is such a small thing. I mean, we really just we don't bring in a lot of money. But I know that Parks and Rec has really been feeling the effect, and Christina, of course, could speak to that more than I can. But I mean, that's been part of my understanding is that's part of the motivation of making sure that we're getting those spun back up and offering what we can to the community as quickly as possible, so that we can continue to bring in revenue. But that's kind of stepping outside of my area of expertise.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I often ask questions for no good reason. So.
Yeah, and real quick, I'll just update you. Yeah, it's not a huge hit to libraries on the revenue side. We don't really task libraries with bringing in revenue, and they don't have a lot of different types of revenue streams like the recreation or Broken T Golf Course does. So we were quick to get those other amenities reopened to try to start bringing in revenue for it. But we are potentially at a $1 million loss in revenue in the parks, recreation, and golf side. And what the library is losing is very minimal, unfortunately, for the whole department as a whole. It's a significant revenue loss, and hopefully next year will be different.
Yeah.
How's the Pirates Cove doing?
Pirates Cove is selling out. They have 250 slots open per time slot, and they're all booked up, which is great. We're actually out of the red and into the black on the revenue side at Pirates Cove, which is good. It won't be as much as in past years.
Good.
I guess we can move on to the action plan. And by the way, it's raining again here, Scott.
Send it this way.
All over the place.
Yeah, I'm looking right out my front window. It's just bone dry.
So on the goal of improving social media, email, and website marketing, we've started consistently sending out an email newsletter via MyEmma, which is a platform the city uses. The nice thing about that I mentioned here is we get some good analytics on it. We can like see what the click-through rates are. You know, if you ever read the scary stories online about tracking pixels and how people can see what you're doing when you read, if you open emails or not. Yeah, now I know what it feels like to be on the other end and be like, oh yeah, it's really nice to get all this information. You know, we've been trying to be thoughtful about how we're using that, not inundating people. We see the rate at which people unsubscribe from the newsletter. So the goal is, of course, to be offering, you know, enough value that people who click it aren't just being like, this is junk, and then unsubscribe. So we're definitely going to be doing that as frequently as makes sense given the audience's interest.
Can you send out a link or subscribe the new board members to the email?
Oh, that's a great, yeah, absolutely. Let me write that down. We can make a note of it.
And Mark, I'll send you the emails.
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I think this is the category about improving our teen services. Just want to update you all that we're having internal conversations about moving the young adult section. Right now, the young adult materials are at the start of the adult fiction, kind of by the public computers. But we're hearing feedback that this is not ideal. That it's a little intimidating for our youngest audience, especially for kids who are outgrowing the junior fiction and are starting to look at YA, that part of the library feels intimidating. And so I know our teen staff are interested in trying to find a spot closer to the kids section that would allow, so sort of that safer half of the library. It's challenging, you know. First of all, it's challenging from like we just don't have that many different places to play with over there. There's the shelving is more or less, our options are limited or constrained at least. And then there's also a balance of, you don't want the teen section to be too closely integrated with the junior section, because then there's you kind of then turn off the older audience that might be somewhat reluctant to feel as if they're, you know, in the kids area. So it's kind of a delicate balancing act anytime you're trying to position and market a young adult section. And when I was starting out in libraries, this is kind of my area of focus. So I'm very interested. This is something that we're hoping to figure some strategies out here, and hope maybe even get things moved around before we go into a general reopening.
Yeah, I have a teen, and I agree. That area is very intimidating to go over to.
Yeah.
That's a great idea to move it closer to the kids area, or just closer to the front desk in general.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts more specifically about like where you would like to see that?
I could see it over where the DVDs are, near the self-checkout, just somewhere closer to on those side of the doors would help.
Yeah. What would you, I mean, just throwing this out there, and I'm sorry if this, hopefully everyone's interested enough in this conversation, but the DVDs and the YA, if we did like a straight swap on those two collections, I mean, how would that land on you?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So I can tell you that historically, the reason you would put DVDs near the circ desk is, of course, to be able to keep a close eye on what's going on over there, because you have a lot of, high theft rate. People pop them open and take the DVDs out or steal. But as the resale value or like the trade-in value of DVDs has declined over the last few years, I think DVD theft rates in libraries have generally gone down. So that's probably not as urgent a concern as it might have been, say, 5 years ago. So that actually would make a lot of sense. We'll have to see if the shelving can accommodate books, because usually DVD shelving is a little narrower and a little less durable. But yeah, if we can figure something out, that might be cool.
Or what about the hold area too? There's all those shelves; those could be anywhere, because anyone who's doing that would probably walk anywhere to get them.
For DVDs, you mean, or?
Well, you know where all the hold books are on
Mhm.
those shelves right
Yep.
around the corner from the DVDs?
Yep.
Like that whole area too could be.
Yeah, Corinne was throwing that one out there, and the only limitation there is just that there's not a lot of shelving. So it would just be a matter of finding the square footage. And you know, we do have a little bit of an investment in the like the big communications put together, the big checkout sign, you know, that's on the wall there, and self-check stations. And so getting the square footage over in there would probably require taking that out and playing around with it. But that's a good thought. So anyway, we'll hopefully have some more updates on this soon, but this is something that we're really interested in doing.
You know, can I ask you something about our teen population? I used to go once a week up to Woodbury Library in Denver, right? Where they have a teen area, and I would usually be there when the kids from the school down the street were having their lunch break. I am well-worn and eroded to really care, but I couldn't help but notice that some of the teens of today had some extremely salty language. And is there a concern with putting that where parents of younger kids might feel aggravated by it?
In some libraries, that is very much a concern. I don't think that would be as big an issue at Englewood. I think at Englewood, the challenge is getting teens to come into the library.
Okay. Yeah.
Without being, the proximity to the school definitely changes the behavior. And in Englewood, it just seems like for whatever reason, we don't have, that you tend to have fewer unattended minors, let's say. Whereas I used to work at the Sheridan Library, which was located inside the high school at the time. It's a public library, and that was, yes, salty language from the kids was very much a concern. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. I haven't seen what what it's like currently. You know, I haven't. The library hasn't been open since I've taken on this role. But when I was there a couple years ago, it was not really a. Not really a hangout spot for the teens. So it's different. Anyway, so this is just talking about the attempts to to increase as written in the action plan. Of course, this was written before anybody had any idea what was coming in 2020. This is what we talked about a little bit ago, circulation, just doing our best to maintain those numbers as best we can.
I have a question about the circulation numbers. It
Please.
says due to decline across a number of platforms. What's the decline across platforms? The last line.
Okay, so the number of platforms there, sorry, I needed to jog my memory, is that we did not have as much activity on Overdrive and Hoopla, which are our two main drivers, or actually all of them were down about 10% in June compared to May. And so it peaked sort of like before we started opening up, before we started offering curbside, as people were still very much in lockdown mode, those numbers kind of hit what really is, like, for us at least, I don't know what this look like for other libraries, but like an all-time high. And now it's kind of tapering back down as probably, as people start to get physical materials again, and also probably just as more things are opened up, there's more stuff for people to do. There's places that you can, people at least briefly were able to go to bars and restaurants again. You know what I mean? Like there's like all that stuff is once again competing for attention. So I think we probably won't see our digital circulation numbers quite as high as they were in May. We'll see, but my suspicion is that was a peak, or it's at least like a baseline to measure against. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just curious what the platforms were. So it's just all the platforms. Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry,
yeah. No, that's great. And actually, that raises. Gosh, I think last time we talked about Hoopla. Does that and the daily cap that we were running into? Does that sound familiar? the users were getting blocked from checking things out because they were running into a daily cap. So we have like so Hoopla is structured where that every time you check out something, it charges against like what our daily limit is. And so for a while there, we were hitting that limit by 10 a.m. So if it was noon and you wanted to check out an audiobook on Hoopla, it was too late. It would block you. So we increased that, and it went into effect about halfway through, or actually toward the end of June. And since then, we have not had, I haven't checked this week, but as of last week, we hadn't had any more daily cap hits. And so it's a little disappointing in retrospect, because if we'd have caught that sooner, we might have been able to keep, the numbers. We really would have, we were throttling our own numbers without meaning to. But it's very, very expensive. And so it's not like something where we can just throw infinite money at it, because it would very quickly take over the rest of the budget. It's a great service, but it's also a very pricey one. So that one, the numbers were down, but we think that was because we were essentially throttling them.
Is there anything we can do, again, with social or for us as new board members, to help promote this program, being it's, I think we're going to go back into a lockdown, or at least a more confined space, to educate, especially new residents and people that may have not been to the library before, about these services they could use at home?
I think that's a great question. The promotion of the digital collections is, partly about making people aware that they're out there, and it's also partly about helping to get them past the initial technical hurdle of figuring out how to use them. And so we have been trying to promote them through the newsletter and through social media. We're certainly talking about it as we talk to patrons, as they call and they have questions about the library. It's one of the talking points that we were trying to remind staff to bring up. We're not always great about that. As far as what you all could do, I'd be very curious first if you have other ideas for what we could do to better promote them. And then beyond that, I think the thing that we could probably do to support you would be to put together information, or maybe graphics that you could share to social media, or handouts. Nobody wants paper handouts right now, because nobody needs more fomites in their lives. But do you have anything in mind? Is there something we could do to support you?
I have two ideas. Sorry, Andy, did I
Please.
interrupt you?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have two ideas on circulation in general, or questions also, I guess. One, I think that Kimberly has everyone's attention 5 times a week now, and I'm not catching all of those, but hey, shout out to the parents, use Tumblebooks, hop on Hoopla, all those things would be a really easy dial in to those communities. Second, I know that you have the little survey on the website for find your next book, but are you doing any personal shopping of the library stacks for especially those families who would come in and get 50 books at a time? Is that an option that you guys could handle, perhaps, if we call in and say we want books about this? Can you put a stack together for us and have us pick it up?
That is something that it's interesting. So your next read is getting much more activity than it normally does. I don't have numbers on that, but it's definitely in the conversation a lot more than it used to be, that we once in a while be like, we got one, and now it's we're getting them.
Okay.
But it would be nice if we could do more of that sort of thing. And I know Michelle, that's kind of her project, and she really wants to be promoting that more. And so she's working on that. As far as sort of the more personal shopping model, one thing we'd been talking about doing, and I think this is not happening largely because the children's team is pretty busy with summer stuff.
Yeah.
Would be to kind of convert the picture book bins, which are already themed together, and basically make bundles out of those. And then that way we'll be able to promote it and say, hey, you can check out, just let us know which theme you want, whether it's Tales, whether it's Favorite Friends, whatever. And you could check out 10 books at a time, all on that topic. And we think that would be a way to kind of, does that sound like kind of what you're describing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think also if you could, I haven't even thought of using the your next read thing for my kids. But I just think that if it was an option to be able to call and say like, hey, we want 10 books about nature. Like,
Right.
I know
Right.
that everything's pretty organized in the stacks there, and it would be pretty, I don't know if it would be easy just to grab like 10 random books. Here you go.
It's absolutely something that we could, like, if you were to call us and make that request, it's absolutely something we can accommodate. The challenge is from a promotional standpoint, how do we draw people's attention to that, and how do we make it like user friendly and make that a good experience? And so that's something that, you know, I know that I've had, you know, we've been talking about how Your Next Read, the way it's structured right now, is very much like, would you like an adult fiction book? You know, and then like, we know everything kind of flows from there. To figure out how to make that more universal and make it a little bit less. Right now, it's basically like, here's a list of 50 different genres. Tell us which one you like. There's, you know, we've got to be able to way to simplify that, or at least make it an intelligent workflow where, you know, you specify, hey, I'm looking for children's materials, and then it you know, populates what the remaining fields are in a way that makes sense, you know,
and maybe you just have like 2 or 3 surveys there,
and
to
maybe
make that
that's
easier for the customer.
Exactly. Yeah, so we do have more work to do on that front. Definitely, let's keep honest about this one. If you keep putting it on the agenda, we'll get it done. I don't want something to crack, because that's a great suggestion. And Andy, to go back to your question,
a couple things. One, I would like us to try, if you've not checked it out, there's something called Likewise. It's an app for your phone. And it's mostly for documentaries and sort of the digital side, but you put in your favorite shows and it tells you things that like you may not think of, and it's like things like that, and it's a free app.
Viewers advisory sort of thing.
I would like to figure out a way to utilize like Nextdoor and that community through us, being we're all in different parts of Inglewood, to post, because God forbid the traction on, you know, a trash can left in the street or a dog barking, but something that we could post. And then one thing, have we
on the Nextdoor front? Sorry.
Posting in Nextdoor, even if it's graphics or something.
Because we just so you know, have no ability to post on Nextdoor. Nextdoor is really restrictive about letting like a library as an entity.
Sure.
The city of Englewood can, the library cannot. So if you all can, like, if we could work with you on that, I think that sounds great.
Yeah, if you write what you want us to say in a graphic, we can post that type of stuff. I think make it so we don't promise things you can't deliver and make a headache. And then have you thought about partnering with some of the nonprofits that are also desperate, especially the SCFD folks, for eyeballs, to invite them to engage both their communities and the Inglewood community? Like I used to work at the Butterfly Pavilion, like putting together a life cycle of a butterfly craft and kit, or some sort of educational thing where they're sharing it on their network, you're sharing it on yours, to sort of cross-pollinate, pun intended, horrible pun, I apologize. But like working with some of the nonprofits that especially are SCFD focused, because they're based on user engagement as well, their dollars and funding. Right. So it may be worth getting in their newsletter and them promoting it and us promoting it, and sort of share the responsibilities. And then your teams doesn't have to create all of that content all the time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have not looked into that. That's probably something that a better question for Kimberly. I don't know if she's spent some. You haven't had a chance to meet Kimberly yet. You don't know who that is. That Kimberly's our children's library supervisor. So I will try to follow up on that. They do community partnerships, and I don't know the specific nature of those and what's been looked into recently. But I think obviously it's an excellent suggestion. So I'll follow up on that.
Am I allowed to support that pun? I enjoyed it.
That and bad sports analogies. So welcome to who I am.
Yeah. The only ones I know.
Okay, so curbside actually changed as of this last week, or as of yesterday. So we'd previously required people, and this was just for various reasons, we'd set it up this way, where you had to schedule a specific appointment, and we were trying to be flexible about the timing of those, saying like, it's okay if you show up 15 minutes, early or late or whatever. And people were all over the map on that, and that was fine. But as of this week, we've changed it. So now you just basically, you pick a day and then you show up that any time during that day and we're ready for you. And so that's been popular. People seem, happy that they're no longer constrained by this appointment time. But also the best thing about it is that it has allowed us to field a lot more appointments. Because previously we were using the scheduling software had a limit on how frequently you could arrange the appointments, and trying to increase that number made it very poor user experience. Since now it's not my favorite thing in the world. It's just we're just using a Google form for signups, but it's still a much easier process for the patrons. And so whereas previously we were doing, I think we were capping out at like 36 pickups each day. Tomorrow we've got 60 scheduled. So we're hoping that that'll help to drive circulation, and then also just allow people to schedule their appointments so that they're not having to wait 3, 4, 5 days before they're able to get their library materials. There were times where people were calling on a Friday to arrange an appointment, and the next available appointment might be Wednesday of the following week, and that was not a good experience at all. So I feel good that we were able to kind of switch that around, and so far it's been a success. Staff were a little concerned about clustering behaviors, people all showing up at once. First couple of days here does not seem to be an issue, but we're going to be monitoring that because we want to make sure that we don't have any sort of safety, like physical distancing dangers in terms of people all kind of gathering together outside the library. Want to make sure that it's safe for our patrons because we do have a lot of vulnerable populations who are using the curbside pickup service. As then the big item is, of course, that the library is going to be taking appointments for computer access. Well, actually, we're currently taking appointments for computer access. So next week we're going to start letting the public back in. They'll have to have set up an appointment, and then they can come in and use the public computers for a 45-minute session. Right now it's a pretty strict limit on how many people. We're being very, very careful to start. Part of that's to make sure that we're able to maintain safe user behaviors consistent with the City of Englewood's face coverings requirement, as well as Tri-County Health Department having a face coverings requirement. Everyone who comes in is going to have to wear a mask over their nose and mouth. And we anticipate that being the most challenging area of pushback from the public, just based on, all the discourse. You certainly see, I'm a Jefferson County resident myself, and I know that Jefferson County has implemented a face coverings in public requirement as of 5 o'clock today. And of course, the comments on Twitter were generally not favorable. And that's just how this is going. I know that the city manager, Sean Lewis at Englewood, has been getting a lot of strong feedback about the face coverings requirement. At the library, we feel somewhat, we're grateful that they're bearing the CCHD and the city manager's office are bearing the brunt of that, because it lets us kind of point to, hey, this isn't the library's requirement, this is the city's requirement, this is the health department's requirement. But it's also, we want to own that we think it's the right thing for the safety of other patrons and the safety of the staff. So my understanding from libraries that have gone through limited reopening over the last few weeks is that for the most part, patrons are being really positive, really helpful, really compliant, that they were not getting a ton of pushback or uncooperative behavior. But we're really curious to see what happens with our users next week. And then in terms of general, like where that puts us in relation to our neighbor libraries, we have some that have really moved ahead with reopening. Douglas County in particular is reopened now, and they are not requiring face masks because that's Douglas County. And then Bemis Library, the Littleton's Library, is reopened as of today, and they are requiring face masks. They're allowing in a very limited number of users, but they are allowing browsing of the collection, which would be something that would be down the road for us. Jeffco, I believe this week is doing a test reopening of Stanley Lake and then the Golden Library. Arapahoe does not have a public timeline on when their facilities will be reopened, but our understanding from talking to their staff is that they also want to start with computer appointments. Computer appointments, the logic there really is it's a controlled thing that you can easily sanitize. It makes sense to schedule, and that it's really high value. We know that with unemployment, or with unemployment being what it is, with the need for government services, financial services, people needing to apply for financial assistance, all those things, and we think that this is a key thing. If it's browsing the collection, we want to get to there. We know that that's high value to people in a different way, but they can get the books through curbside. There's other way, or they can do things like doing the bundles of the picture books. We have other strategies that we could explore to meet that need. Okay, so like I said, Arapahoe, we don't know their timeline, but they're probably thinking about doing the same thing with the computer access. Denver, latest we've heard from their staff, and this is not public, this is not official, but that their timeline for any sort of actual reopening could be as far out as September. So that's a tough one for us, because we have a lot of overlap with patron demographics with Denver, and also patron visit. A lot of our visitors are coming in off the light rail, and so if Denver's libraries aren't reopened, that makes it more challenging for us to reopen, because we need to figure out what the level of demand is going to be. Frankly, how many people we can have in the library versus how many people are trying to get into the library. So that's why we want to be cautious as we go through reopening. We're definitely, we're very, very sensitive to the need for people to get back to the library. But we do need to make sure that we're proceeding in a way that's not just consistent with public health requirements, but really thoughtful about the safety of our vulnerable populations who use the library. Any thoughts on that? I'm actually really curious to get your feedback about this.
Is there like an informational campaign in place in the library for when people return that talks about distancing, mask wearing, and kind of preempts some of the conversations that might ensue?
Yep, absolutely. We have talking points for the staff as they're setting up these appointments that emphasize first the mask wearing, just to make sure that people are aware of that requirement, and if they have an issue with that we can we can talk it through before they show up and it escalates. We also talk about the need to maintain safe physical distancing, and in particular with computer appointments, we're emphasizing that physical distancing includes that we won't be able to work shoulder to shoulder with our patrons who have technical needs. And that's something that's going to be challenging, because we know that's our computer users often want a staff member right there at their side, helping them navigate their email or whatever it is, and that we won't be able to touch or interact with their computer. Now we're going to do everything, anything we can do to provide help that still it maintains safe physical distancing. Absolutely, we're going to do, but we're trying to be upfront, make sure people are aware of that, and we're also emphasizing, that we are setting these strict time limits so that we can get one group of users in and then get them out, so that we can get the next group in safely. Right now, the way we're structuring it is that we're limiting it so that a single computer won't be reused in the course of a day. So that way, we're only having to sanitize them once a day. But eventually we'll have to figure out strategies for sanitizing them more frequently as we start allowing more people in. But yeah, we're going to have, so like I said, talking points when they set up the appointments. We're going to include information. We kind of hinted at this in the newsletter a little bit. We're working on the website update and social media updates, but that's for this thing, for computer appointments, that's not really the most effective way to communicate, because people who are access restricted are probably not seeing the email newsletter or reading the social media updates. So we want to be thinking more about the sort of analog ways of getting this information out. So we're mostly what we've been working on this week is signage, a lot of signage. Yeah. So.
And what about, I don't know if this is even possible, but what about the librarians being able to take over the computers virtually from their station and help navigate, troubleshoot, whatever tech support that way?
Some libraries found software to do that. We don't have that capacity right now. It's something we'd have to work with our IT department to implement. Yeah.
There's some free platforms that let you do it. I can send you a short list of some of them just to get the ball rolling, because that might be something that, yeah, I will.
Yeah, it's something we need to reach out to our IT team to talk about.
I think that would be a real good idea. I mean, if I didn't have millennial kids, you know, I'd probably have like an AOL email account and be downloading spam constantly, you know.
You'd be posting announcements on your MySpace.
Please, live journal, please. Okay, I think I might have jumped the gun on some of our, let's see.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, because we kind of talked through a lot of these things already, the library virtual activities, communication library resources. If you want me to elaborate on any of this stuff, I'm happy. Actually, the one in there would be summer reading update, which I do have a little bit more from Kimberly if you'd like. Would you like me to proceed to that, or do you have any other questions on the new business or old business listed here?
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Me either.
Okay. So Kimberly says, yeah, we talked about the story time in the park and the take and makes. She says that they have 4 more weeks of summer reading programming planned. They're planning to make their teen Harry Potter program at the end of July an in-person program by holding it outside and limiting registration. They're also planning to make their Last Kids Thursday program an in-person program by holding it outside and having timed registration. All activities will be non-touch. She says lots of jumping. And they're going to wrap up summer reading in mid-August and take the rest of the month off to give families a chance to settle into the school year. And they're starting to look at what fall programming will look like. She says we'll for sure keep virtual story times as well as story time in the park as long as the weather holds out. Otherwise, we're planning 1 program a month for each of our target groups, teens, tweens, kids, and early literacy. She says if the teens are open to it, we'll also keep the weekly virtual hangout, or they'll conduct a book club, writing club, and movie discussions. They've had a total of 462 registrants for summer reading, and 128 so far have completed. So not exactly the numbers that we would get, you know, in a normal summer reading year, but you know, pretty good to still be reaching, you know, 450 kids or so.
Was there, Scott, did you add an item to the new agenda?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask for an update on regarding the outreach to, excuse me, the outreach to homeschoolers we talked about last time.
Yep.
And I bring this up because not only that I think it was a great topic and it seemed like we were getting some good ideas, but just increasingly, I have a sense that despite all the optimistic talk about schools opening this fall, and I think they will reopen, I get the sense a lot of people are not one bit eager to send their kids back in while things are still so up in the air, but yet obviously they're going to want to school their kids. Some people may find the remote instruction offered by the districts doesn't work for them. I just think homeschooling is going to see a bump for a lot of reasons, but I think the pandemic is going to drive a lot of homeschooling, and so yeah, I'm curious if there's been any progress toward outreach to homeschoolers or trying to get programs going for them, the things we talked about last time.
Yeah. So I did talk to Kimberly following up on that, and she was very interested in the idea. She, I think we talked a little bit about her perspective that we have all these resources. It's really a question of marketing more than anything else. She did kind of ask, can we please like do this after summer reading and as we go into the school year? And I said that's fine. So we are, compiling resources. Our plan is to make this an area of focus sort of in the post-summer reading, period as the school year starts to ramp up. We are working on, actually showed Christina today, we're working on a redesigned website for the library. Right now we just have the website that's through the city. We were kind of working on a standalone. And we have a page that we're starting to build that will be homeschooling resources for homeschooling families specific to that page, and then compiling both our online databases that we think are of relevance, custom lists through the catalog of books and other resources that make sense, external links. Kimberly has a lot of ideas of what can go into that, but that's. Yeah, it's something where we're still in planning phases, but and she has requested that we, not try to make that all come together right now while they have their hands completely full with summer reading. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to see us be caught flat-footed when fall comes around because also, I mean, Colorado is very homeschool friendly. I mean, if you say you're homeschooling, you're homeschooling. Nobody's, there's not going to be somebody checking, right? And I think people may decide, August 20th that like, I'm not sending my kids back. I expect a spike. I really do. And in any case, there's a lot of homeschooling. Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I'm on, I have two kids, and one of them I've been homeschooling for a few years. And then I also have a kid who's in public school. So but I've been looking at both sides of it, and we're seeing an explosion in the homeschool Facebook groups of people interested, asking questions like, what do I do? Can someone explain to me the law? What curriculum? I think Marie's idea about getting list of books, like themes together, that would benefit even after the pandemic's over. That would benefit homeschoolers, school kids, everyone really. So just ideas like that. But I think Scott's right. I think even the kids who are doing school at home online are going to be looking for outlets. And I totally understand that it's a little early with summer reading going on, but I do think that there's going to be a real need for interaction and programming and resources.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is my people that are getting out of preschool to go to kindergarten. None of them want to start the kindergarten. So.
Yeah, we're not going to school.
Yeah.
All right. Did we miss anything from new business or old business? Kind of jumped around there. I think we got it all. Okay. Was there any staff's choice? I think we got that too.
Sorry,
anything else, Christina?
No, I think we kind of covered everything with reopening of Pirates Cove, and the rec centers are open, and we're slowly reopening the library. So it's just kind of turtle pace, being safe with COVID, and I do think we'll see a spike, but fingers crossed we don't. So that's all.
It's already going up. Okay. Want to do board member's choice or?
Can I jump back in real quick?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. I just wanted to follow up. We talked about the homeschooling thing. I also wanted to follow up on what Marie brought up last time about sort of inclusivity. Making sure that we are raising awareness. I hopefully you've seen a lot of that on social media. And just wanted to, yeah.
I have. Yes, okay. Thank you. Yeah. And I talked to Kimberly about it today, and I noticed that one of the books she read yesterday was like a Black family, and it just, yeah. Thank you. I think everyone's doing what they can right now.
Cool. Sorry, that was all. Thanks guys. Sorry to interrupt you.
Great. Thank you. All right. I don't have much for board member's choice. I've been trying to garden this year, and I seem to have failed totally. So
should we do like little intros since we have new people?
Yeah.
Let's do an intro.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yes.
At the beginning. Good point. I'm Guy. I'm my day job, I work for Denver, where I'm a not really but sort of librarian. And I've been on the board for a while. Okay. I guess I can direct people. Andy.
Is it to me?
Yeah.
I also work for the city of Denver. I work in the clerk's office, overseeing campaign finance reform for the city. I'm a relatively new Inglewood resident, so I've been here just shy of a year, but live here with my partner, and I'm excited to give back. And before working at the city, I'm a fundraiser, so anything I can do to support in the fundraising realm or any in that land, please let me know to support any shortfalls the city has in the library. I'm happy to help if that's allowed within the city structure.
Are you pretty new down there? I haven't met you in the clerk's office.
I've been there. I started 2 weeks before we all got sent home for COVID.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's been an interesting adventure joining the city. So.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, I used to work in the clerk and recorder's office, so I know.
I am in the web, so come down and say hello when we're allowed to actually see people.
Right now, I'm working on the core request for you guys. So yeah. Amy, are you also city?
Yes, I also work for the city and county of Denver. I work for human services and child protection, but I'm more of like a tech person. And I work from home right now though. So, and I've been in Inglewood about 15 years, and I'm a Denver native. And yeah, that's all.
Scott?
Hi, Scott Gilbert. I do a lot of different things for a living, all writing and editing. I've had a lot of churn in my clients lately, but somehow, despite all the terror, I'm still paying my bills, which is pretty astonishing. Aside from that, I don't know. I've lived in Englewood since 1996, which by Colorado standards makes me something like a pioneer. But before that, I lived in Denver for a while. I grew up in the Midwest. I don't know. Beyond that, I have 3 grandkids, and I devote a substantial portion of my income to keeping Andy's custard in business. And that's about it. It's really good to see everybody.
Helene?
Hi, everyone. I'm pretty new. I've been here a year. I'm a first-time homeowner, so I chose Inglewood, and I absolutely love it. I have like a 100-year-old little tiny house, and it's spider season. My profession is I'm an instructional designer, and so there's a lot of crossover between what I do and library work. My mother was a librarian, actually, so I grew up in the stacks. And I'm working towards a Master's of Science right now in Learning Technology, and I produce e-learning content for really large organizations. I'm working on a UN project right now. I just produced 2 COVID-19 courses for WHO. So one thing I've been thinking is about an e-learning, like there's a lot of the courses I produce for the UN or the WHO are actually free to the public, and there's a lot of free e-learning content out there. And we could maybe collect all of that and have a place for it. And I think that could be one of the resources that lives on past the pandemic, which is something Sarah mentioned, that like some of the ideas are just good beyond the pandemic. And I think maybe having a robust e-learning resource on the new website or something could be good. And then also the organization I work for did the COVID campaign for IKEA. So if you've been to IKEA and you see all the signs and everything, and they've really like kind of integrated their COVID training, that's also something we've been doing a lot of. So I'm happy to help with that. I do graphics, video editing, all kinds of media art. And so anything like that that is needed, I'm happy to help out. I make really cool gifts. So like little gifts, like if you want to advertise, like do social media campaigns, it's like kind of fun to have a little animation in there. So I'm happy to like talk with anybody about that as the needs arise. But I'm really excited to be able to apply some of my skills to my local community and like work on really here, because everything I do is so far away, and it's kind of abstract, and I'm really excited to actually be part of the community now. So,
Great.
Cool.
Great.
Marie?
Hi, I'm Marie. I am a stay-at-home mom to a 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, whose name is Helene. Small world. There aren't many. I know.
OMG, that's crazy. Okay, well, when she grows up, we can somebody gets
I
it
named
right.
her for my grandmas who were Helen and Ellen, and she's Helene. And
My
then I
grandmother
have
was
an almost,
Helen.
yes, I have an almost 2-year-old as well, named Kaiji. And yeah, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so we're pretty frequent library users and have been taking up all these extra opportunities and loving story time in the park. And yeah.
Sarah?
I'm Sarah. I've been in Inglewood for about 13 years now. I'm also a stay-at-home mom. I have a 14-year-old daughter who will be going to Littleton High School next year, hopefully, if all works out. And I have a 9-year-old daughter who I homeschool. That's about it. And just welcome Andy and Helene. Glad to have you guys.
Austin?
Hey guys, I'm Austin. I've lived in Inglewood for a little under 2 years now. For work, I co-own a local martial arts school with my lifelong Muay Thai coach. And beyond that, it's just good to see everyone's faces on here and hear some familiar, friendly voices and hear the plans of reopening and what's going on with the city. It's also nice. I always like hearing Scott's input and opinions, so I value that.
It's not an endangered resource.
And Dave, did you get to introduce yourself?
You bet. Well, a very warm welcome, Helene and Andy. You picked a great board. My name's Dave Cuesta. I'm District 4, which is the southern part of the city. I'm really happy that you guys are here. I think you both had great ideas during the interview, so thanks so much for joining, and looking forward to meeting with you guys more. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Well, thank everyone for that. My daughter has come down and said I've been taking too long. So.
It's my fault, sorry.
Little princess. Is there anything else we need to talk about, or are we all done?
I think we're done for this month.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, good seeing y'all.
Thanks. Thank you.
Everybody.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Andy. Nice to meet you, Helene.
Bye.
Oh God, I'm the last one in the meeting.